The alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning, just as they had done 3 years ago during first contact. But this time they brought something different. Something that glittered in the starlight like a promise and a trap combined into one. Ambassador Sarah Chen floated in the observation deck of humanity's orbital station, watching the massive vessels position themselves in perfect formation. She had been studying alien cultures for 3 years now, ever since the Galactic Council had made themselves known to Earth. She thought she understood them. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The delegation arrived in a shuttle that seemed to be made of liquid silver. When the doors opened, 5 aliens stepped out. Each one represented a different species from the Council. There was Executor Varn, a towering being covered in crystalline plates. Beside him stood Matriarch Isala, whose body shifted between solid and gas. The others were equally impressive and equally strange to human eyes, but Sarah barely noticed them. Her attention was fixed on what they carried between them. A throne. It was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. The seat seemed to be carved from a single massive crystal that pulsed with inner light. Symbols she couldn't read flowed across its surface like water. Ambassador Chen, Executor Varn's voice came through the translator, deep and resonant. "We bring you a great honor. This is Earth's throne, crafted in your honor by the oldest artisans in the galaxy. It awaits you in the Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council." Sarah blinked. "A throne? I don't understand." Matriarch Isala drifted forward, her form solidifying into something almost humanoid. "Every member species of the Galactic Council has a throne. It is your seat of power, your voice in the governance of the galaxy. With this throne comes respect, protection, and a place among the great civilizations." It sounded wonderful, too wonderful. Sarah had learned in her years of diplomatic service that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. "What does accepting this throne require?" she asked carefully. The aliens exchanged glances. It was Executor Varn who answered. "Merely that you accept the 47 protocols. They are the ancient laws that govern all civilized species. They have maintained peace and order for 10,000 years." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. "May I see these protocols?" Another alien, a reptilian creature named Consul Thex, produced a data crystal. "Of course. We expected you would wish to review them. These are not demands, Ambassador. They are the foundation of galactic civilization." Sarah took the crystal and immediately sent it to Earth's analysis teams. Then she invited the delegation to wait in comfortable quarters, while humanity reviewed the protocols. The aliens agreed, confident and relaxed. They had done this hundreds of times before with other species. The answer was always yes. For 3 days, Sarah watched as Earth's best legal minds, scientists, and military strategists tore apart the 47 protocols. What they found made her blood run cold. Protocol 7 required all member species to share any military technology with the Council within 6 months of development. Protocol 12 limited the size of any species' military fleet. Protocol 23 required approval from the Council before colonizing any new star system. Protocol 31 mandated population controls based on Council calculations of sustainable growth. The list went on. Each protocol seemed reasonable on its surface, designed to prevent war and promote peace. But together they formed something else entirely. A cage, a set of chains disguised as honor. Dr. James Martinez, Earth's chief xenotechnology expert, summed it up in a late-night meeting. "If we accept these protocols, we give up our independence. We'll never be able to defend ourselves without permission. We'll never expand beyond what they allow. We'll be permanent children in a galaxy of adults who make all the rules. But if we refuse," Sarah said quietly, "we'll be alone. No allies, no trade, no access to their technology or knowledge." "We've been alone before," replied General Amara Okonkwo, her West African accent thick with determination. "We survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. We made it to space on our own. We can keep going on our own." President Zhao Chen joined the video call from Beijing. "What concerns me is Protocol 43, the one about correction of deviant civilizations. It's vague enough to mean anything they want it to mean." Sarah nodded. She had been worried about the same thing. If humanity refused the throne and then didn't follow galactic norms, the Council had given itself permission to correct them. She didn't need a translator to know what that meant. The next day, Sarah met with the delegation again. They were expecting her to arrive with formal acceptance. Instead, she came with a simple statement prepared by Earth's united government. Executor Varn, Matriarch Isala, honored delegates, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Humanity has carefully reviewed the 47 protocols. We have considered the great honor you offer us. The aliens leaned forward slightly, anticipating her acceptance. And we must respectfully decline. The silence that followed was absolute. Sarah could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. The aliens stared at her as if she had spoken in a language their translators couldn't process. Finally, Executor Varn found his voice. Decline? Ambassador, perhaps you misunderstand. This is not an offer that can be declined. Every species in the galaxy accepts their throne. It is the way things are done. Then humanity will be the first to do things differently, Sarah replied. We appreciate the Council's offer, but we cannot accept terms that would require us to surrender our sovereignty. We wish to be friends with the Council, to trade and learn from you, but as equals, not as subordinates. Matriarch Isala's form flickered with what might have been agitation. You would choose isolation? Humanity is young, barely learning to walk among the stars. Without the Council's guidance, you will struggle. You will fail. Perhaps, Sarah acknowledged, but we will fail or succeed on our own terms. The throne is beautiful, and I'm sure it was crafted with great care. But Earth's throne will remain empty, because humanity doesn't need permission to exist in this galaxy. The delegation left within the hour, their silver shuttle departing without ceremony. Sarah watched them go and wondered if she had just made the worst mistake in human history, or the best decision humanity had ever made. Below her, on Earth, billions of people waited to hear what she had done. When the announcement came, reactions were mixed. Some were terrified. Others were angry. But most felt something they hadn't expected to feel. Pride. Humanity had been offered a seat at the table of galactic civilization and had the courage to say no. The throne would remain empty, not because humanity wasn't worthy, but because they refused to pay the price of admission. In the grand chamber of the Galactic Council, 10,000 light-years away, Earth's throne sat in its designated spot. Beautiful, gleaming, and waiting. The other species stared at it in disbelief. In 10,000 years of galactic history, every throne had been filled within days of being offered. Earth's throne sat empty. And the galaxy would never be quite the same. 6 months after Ambassador Chen refused the throne, humanity began to understand the true cost of their defiance. It started quietly. Trade agreements that had been under negotiation suddenly stalled. Alien merchants who had been eager to sell their goods to Earth's markets stopped responding to messages. Scientific exchanges that had promised to share advanced technologies were politely canceled. One by one, the doors that had begun to open for humanity slammed shut. Captain David Park stood on the bridge of the merchant vessel Prosperity, staring at his communication screen in frustration. He had traveled to the Kepler station, a massive trading hub run by the Thalaxian Commerce Guild, with a hold full of Earth's finest goods. Platinum, rare Earth elements, art, and cultural items that aliens had shown interest in before. Sir, they're denying us docking permission again, his communications officer reported. That's the 5th time this week. David slammed his fist on the armrest. Did they give a reason? The same one as always. Regulatory compliance issues. It's garbage, sir. We meet every safety standard they have. David knew the truth. This wasn't about regulations. This was about the Council sending a message. Trade with humanity, and you'll lose your privileges in Council space. It was extortion dressed up as bureaucracy. Back on Earth, the situation was becoming clearer. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Earth's liaison for scientific cooperation, sat in her office reviewing the data. Every single research partnership with alien institutions had been terminated. Universities across known space that had welcomed human students now claimed they had no room. Technology sharing agreements were voided, citing security concerns. She called Ambassador Chen, who was now permanently stationed on the orbital platform that served as Earth's diplomatic headquarters. Sarah, we're being blacklisted, Yuki said bluntly. Every species in the Council has been told to cut ties with us. Sarah nodded wearily. She had been expecting this. The Council wants to teach us a lesson. They think if they isolate us, we'll realize our mistake and accept the throne. Will we? Yuki asked. Sarah looked out at Earth, the blue marble hanging in the void. Not if I have anything to say about it. But Yuki, we need to be realistic. We're alone now. Really alone. We need to adapt. Adapting meant changing everything about humanity's approach to space. Within weeks, Earth's governments called an emergency summit in Geneva. Every nation sent representatives. The discussions were heated, but for once everyone agreed on the fundamentals. Humanity needed to become self-sufficient and fast. General Okonkwo presented the military assessment. We have some alien technology samples from before the isolation began. Not much, but enough to study. Our scientists believe they can reverse engineer the basics of their FTL drives within 5 years, if we dedicate resources to it. 5 years is too long, argued Minister Zhang from the Chinese delegation. The council could move against us before then. Then we work faster, replied President Silva of Brazil. We pool our resources. Every nation contributes. This isn't about national pride anymore. This is about human survival. The summit resulted in the United Earth Initiative, the most ambitious cooperative project in human history. Every space-capable nation would contribute technology, resources, and personnel to a single goal, making humanity independent of the galactic community that had rejected them. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy with the Council's decision. Kess, a Valorian scientist who had briefly worked with human researchers during the contact period, watched the isolation with growing unease. She had liked the humans. They were curious, creative, and surprisingly kind. The Council's response seemed cruel to her. Against the direct orders of her government, Kess sent an encrypted message to Dr. Tanaka. It took 3 weeks to reach Earth through hidden channels, but when it arrived, it changed everything. The message was simple but terrifying. The Council is not just isolating you. They are preparing to contain you. Within a decade, they plan to establish an enforcement perimeter around your space. You will not be allowed to expand beyond your current system. They believe you will either accept the throne or slowly die out. I'm sorry. I wish I could do more. A friend. Sarah read the message 3 times before calling an emergency meeting of Earth's leadership. The holographic faces of presidents, prime ministers, and generals filled the room. They're going to cage us, she said simply. Not destroy us, but trap us in our own solar system until we give up. The room erupted in angry voices. Some called for building weapons. Others wanted to try diplomacy again. General Okonkwo's voice cut through the chaos. We need to move now, not in 5 years now. We establish colonies beyond this system before they can lock us in. Small ones, hidden ones in places they're not watching closely. We spread out so they can't bottle us up in one place. With what ships? Someone asked. We don't have FTL yet. Then we use what we have, Sarah said, her mind racing. Generation ships. Sleeper ships. Old technology, but it works. We send people out now on slower-than-light drives to nearby systems. By the time the Council realizes what we're doing, we'll already be there. It was a desperate plan, but no one had a better one. Within months, humanity began converting massive colony ships for long voyages. Volunteers signed up by the thousands, willing to sleep for decades to reach new worlds. They would be the seeds of humanity's future, planted before the Council could burn the field. Meanwhile, the reverse engineering project made unexpected progress. The human engineers approached alien technology differently than the aliens expected. Where other species tried to copy what they saw, humans asked why it worked that way and looked for alternatives. Dr. Martinez made the breakthrough. We can't build their drives exactly, he explained in a presentation to Earth's leadership. Their technology relies on exotic matter we can't manufacture yet. But we can create something similar using quantum field manipulation. It'll be louder, less efficient, and shorter range, but it'll work. And most importantly, it's ours on how long? Sarah asked. 2 years for a working prototype. Maybe 3 for something we can put in a ship. It wasn't fast enough to avoid the Council's containment, but it was faster than anyone had hoped. Humanity had something now that they'd been missing for 6 months. Hope. As the first-generation ships departed for distant stars, moving at a fraction of light speed on journeys that would take decades, the people of Earth watched with mixed emotions. Those ships carried their children, their dreams, and their defiance. On the bridge of the colony ship New Horizon, Captain Rebecca Stone looked back at Earth one last time before entering cryosleep. She thought about the empty throne sitting in the Council chambers waiting for humanity to submit. Let it gather dust, she whispered to herself. We're not coming back to claim it. We're going forward instead. The Council, in their ancient chambers 10,000 light-years away, congratulated themselves on handling the human problem. The young species would learn. They always did. In a few years, a decade at most, Earth would realize their mistake. The throne would be filled, and order would be maintained. They had no idea that humanity had already slipped through their fingers, moving toward a future the Council hadn't planned for and couldn't control. The cage was being built, but the bird had already learned to fly. 5 years after refusing the throne, humanity unveiled their miracle. The Prometheus drive ignited for the first time in the test vessel Explorer, and Captain James Rodriguez felt the ship slip into faster-than-light travel. It wasn't smooth like the alien drives he'd experienced. The Prometheus drive howled, sending vibrations through every deck plate. It was inefficient, consuming more energy than any Council ship would tolerate, and it was loud, broadcasting humanity's presence across the stars like a shout in a quiet library. But it was theirs, built by human hands from human understanding. No Council approval needed, no permission required. "We have FTL, Earth Control," James reported, trying to keep the emotion out of his voice and failing. Humanity just earned its wings. Back on Earth, in the command center beneath Geneva, thousands of scientists, engineers, and officials erupted in celebration. They had done what the Council said would take them decades. They had done it in 5 years through pure human stubbornness and refusal to give up. Ambassador Chen, older now with gray streaking her black hair, allowed herself a rare smile. "Begin the expansion protocol," she ordered. "Let's see what's out there beyond the Council's maps." The Council had made a critical mistake. They had isolated humanity, yes, but isolation meant humans explored alone, without Council observers reporting their every move. And humans had always been good at finding things others had missed. Captain Maria Santos commanded the exploration vessel Discovery when it happened. Her ship was mapping systems that the Council charts listed as unremarkable. She was about to find out why the Council hadn't bothered looking closely. "Captain, I'm picking up artificial structures on the third moon," her sensor officer called out. "Multiple settlements. They're inhabited." Maria felt her heart race. "Any Council ships in the system?" "Negative. We're alone out here." Maria made a decision that would change the galaxy. "Take us in slowly. Broadcast on all frequencies. Let them know we come in peace." The beings they met called themselves the Creche. They were small, barely reaching Maria's waist, with 4 arms and eyes that seemed too large for their heads. They lived in domed cities on a moon that barely had enough atmosphere to breathe. Through laborious translation, Maria learned their story. The Creche were one of dozens of species living on the edges of Council space. They called themselves the Scattered Peoples. They had territories too small to matter, resources too limited to attract attention, and populations too tiny to threaten anyone. But they paid. Oh, how they paid. "The Council enforcers come twice a year," explained Elder Vix, the leader of the largest Creche settlement. "They demand tribute, metal, food, manufactured goods. They call it protection fees to maintain galactic security. But they protect us from nothing. There are no threats out here." "How long has this been going on?" Maria asked. "Since my grandmother's grandmother's time. Maybe longer. We have paid for 300 cycles." Maria felt anger burning in her chest. This was what the 47 protocols protected. A system where the strong took from the weak and called it civilization. "Elder Vix," Maria said carefully, "what if I told you there's another way?" Over the next 6 months, Discovery and other human ships made contact with 17 different species of scattered peoples. Some were refugees from Council space who had fled persecution. Others were species that had developed space travel too late, arriving at the galactic stage to find all the good territories claimed. All of them were trapped in the same cycle, too weak to resist, too useful to ignore, condemned to pay tribute forever. Maria offered them something revolutionary: trade agreements with no strings attached. Fair prices for goods, technology sharing that went both ways, and most shocking of all, defensive alliances that didn't require submission. "But why?" asked a Thalian merchant captain named Zarek, his tentacles twitching with suspicion. "What do you want from us?" "Partners," Maria replied simply. "The Council wants subjects. We want friends. We're alone out here, and so are you. Together, maybe we're not so alone anymore." The news of humanity's activities reached the council chambers like a slowly spreading poison. At first they dismissed it. Humans building alliances with insignificant species? Let them. It changed nothing, but then the reports kept coming. Humans weren't just trading with the scattered peoples. They were teaching them, sharing technology, helping them upgrade their defenses, building a network of mutual support that operated entirely outside council authority. Executor Varn called an emergency session. This cannot be tolerated. The humans are disrupting the established order. They're trading with species we consider beneath notice, Matriarch Isala pointed out.
Why do we care?
Because other species are watching, Varn replied grimly. Already some of our tributary worlds are asking questions. If the scattered peoples can refuse to pay tribute because they have human protection, how long before our own subjects demand the same? The council dispatched a battle fleet to reinforce their point. 12 warships, more than enough to intimidate any minor species, jumped into the system where Maria Santos was meeting with a coalition of scattered peoples' representatives. Admiral Korth commanded the council fleet. His orders were clear: escort the human ships back to their territory. Use force if necessary, but avoid actually destroying them. The council wanted humanity humbled, not martyred. Human vessel discovery. Korth's message came through cold and formal. You are operating in violation of established territorial boundaries. You will power down your drives and prepare to be escorted back to your designated space. Maria looked at the representatives around her conference table. The Kresh, the Thalians, the Valorians who had defected to join the growing alliance. They all looked scared. The council fleet outgunned Discovery by a huge margin. Admiral Korth, Maria replied, keeping her voice steady. We are conducting legitimate trade and diplomatic discussions. We have violated no laws. The 47 protocols govern all civilized behavior in this galaxy. Your presence here disturbs the established order. We never accepted the 47 protocols, Maria said. You can't hold us to rules we never agreed to follow. There was a long pause. Maria could almost hear Korth's teeth grinding across the void. You will comply, or we will force compliance. Then try, Maria said, and cut the channel. What happened next would be debated in military academies for decades. Admiral Korth, confident in his overwhelming firepower, ordered his ships to close with Discovery and prepare boarding actions. He intended to seize the human vessel and bring its crew back to council space for judgment. He had no idea that humanity had spent 5 years preparing for exactly this moment. Discovery's escorts, 4 human warships that had been hanging back, suddenly appeared on sensors as their stealth systems dropped. They weren't designed for stealth the way council ships were. They were designed to hide in the noise of the Prometheus drive's signature, making them invisible until they wanted to be seen. Admiral, we have multiple human warships at close range, Korth's sensor officer reported, his voice rising in panic. Before Korth could respond, every council ship in his fleet lost power simultaneously. Their engines went dead. Life support continued, but weapons, shields, and drives were completely offline. Maria's face appeared on Korth's view screen. Your ships are undamaged, Admiral. My people just convinced your computer systems to take a nap. In about 4 hours, they'll reboot on their own and you can go home. But understand this, humanity can defend itself and our allies. We don't want war. We don't want to conquer anyone. But we will not be bullied. Korth stared at her in shock. This is an act of war. No, Maria corrected. War is what we would have done if we wanted your ships destroyed. This is a demonstration. Go back to the council and tell them that Earth's throne is still empty, and it's staying that way. And tell them that any species who wants to deal with us is free to do so. We're not going anywhere. As Discovery and its escorts jumped to FTL, leaving the disabled council fleet behind, Maria allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had just thrown down a challenge that couldn't be ignored. The empty throne wasn't just a symbol anymore. It was a declaration of independence that the whole galaxy could see. 8 years after the throne was offered and refused, the galaxy learned the truth. Kes had been planning her defection for months. The Valorian scientist had watched with growing horror as the Council tightened its grip on information about humanity. Military reports were classified, trade data was restricted, even cultural exchanges were monitored and controlled. The Council was afraid and fear made them dangerous. She stole what she could. Files, recordings, historical archives that told the real story of the Galactic Council. Then she boarded a small research vessel, claimed she was conducting a survey mission, and pointed her ship toward human space. It took 3 weeks to reach Earth's orbital station. When she arrived, she requested asylum, and an immediate meeting with Ambassador Chen. Sarah Chen had aged noticeably in 8 years. The stress of guiding humanity through isolation and toward independence had taken its toll. But her eyes were still sharp, and she listened carefully as Kess laid out what she had discovered. The thrones are not just ceremonial, Kess explained, her form flickering between solid and energy as her anxiety grew. They are compliance devices, Sarah leaned forward. Explain. Kess pulled up holographic displays showing complex neurological scans. Each throne is embedded with technology that interfaces with the neural patterns of whoever sits in it. It releases specific compounds and energy patterns that alter brain chemistry. Very subtle, very gradual. Over time, the occupant becomes more agreeable, more willing to accept the status quo, less likely to challenge authority. Dr. Tanaka, who had joined the meeting, stared at the data in disbelief. They're mind control devices? Not exactly, Kess corrected. The person remains themselves. Their personality, memories, and thoughts are intact, but their emotional response to authority changes. They become more trusting, more cooperative. The council doesn't control what their representatives think. They control how intensely they're willing to fight for those thoughts. Sarah felt sick. Every species that accepted a throne has been subtly manipulated for thousands of years, Kess finished. Yes, the Council of Ascended Civilizations isn't a democracy. It's a gerontocracy maintained by chemical compliance. The oldest species, the ones who built the thrones, remain fully independent. Everyone else sits in chairs that make them agree. How long have you known this? Sarah asked. I suspected for 2 years. I only confirmed it 6 months ago when I accessed restricted archives. The founding species, the original 5 civilizations that created the Council, they knew exactly what they were building. A system that would never change because no one would want to change it strongly enough to fight. Sarah stood and walked to the window, looking down at Earth. They had been right to refuse. If they had accepted the throne, humanity would have slowly lost its edge, its independence, its willingness to challenge injustice. They would have become another voice in the chorus, singing the same song everyone else sang. We need to tell everyone, Dr. Tanaka said. Every species in the galaxy deserves to know. They won't believe us, Kess warned. The Council will call it propaganda. They'll say humanity is lying to justify their rebellion. Then we need proof they can't deny, Sarah said, turning back to them. Kess, can you remove the compliance technology from a throne without destroying it? Kess's form solidified as she considered. Possibly, if I had access to one, but the thrones are kept in the Grand Chamber under constant guard. Sarah smiled grimly. Then it's fortunate that Earth has one. It's been sitting in storage for 8 years. They worked in secret for 3 weeks. Kess carefully dismantled Earth's throne, documenting every component, every circuit, every chemical reservoir. The evidence was damning. The throne contained enough neurochemical manipulation technology to run a small hospital. It was sophisticated, elegant, and evil, but even as they worked, the galaxy was changing. 3 other species had begun questioning their relationship with the Council. The Yethrin Collective, a proud warrior species, had noticed that their representatives returned from council sessions far more willing to compromise than when they left. The Corvin hegemony had discovered historical records showing their ancestors had been fierce opponents of galactic centralization until they accepted their throne. Most significantly, the Talax Union had done the unthinkable. They had removed their throne from the council chambers and placed it in a museum. The council had been furious but couldn't act overtly without revealing their hand. The Union claimed they were preserving a historical artifact. Everyone knew what it really meant. Meanwhile, humanity's alliance with the scattered peoples had grown into something that worried the Council deeply. The Free Trade Zone, as it was now called, included 47 different species. They traded freely, shared technology without restriction, and maintained mutual defense pacts. Most importantly, they operated completely outside Council authority. Small species that had been paying tribute for centuries suddenly had an option. Join the Free Trade Zone and humanity's fleets would protect them. The tribute payments stopped. Council enforcers who arrived to collect found human warships waiting. And after what happened to Admiral Korth's fleet, No council commander wanted to test humanity's capabilities again. In the Grand Chamber, Executor Varn faced the reality of the council's first genuine crisis in millennia. His fellow councilors argued among themselves, their voices rising in the vast space. "We must act decisively," Matriarch Isala insisted. "Humanity is dismantling everything we've built." "We offer them the ultimatum," Varn declared. "They accept the throne and submit to the protocols, or we launch a full interdiction. No trade, no communication, no travel in or out of their space. We surround them completely." "And if they refuse?" asked Consul Thex. "Then we maintain the blockade until they collapse. They're still a young species. They cannot survive forever without resources from outside their territory." The ultimatum was delivered with great ceremony. A council delegation, larger than the first, arrived at Earth's orbital station. They carried the same throne that had been refused 8 years ago, polished and perfect. Ambassador Chen met them in the diplomatic hall, but this time she wasn't alone. Representatives from 47 scattered people species stood with her. So did delegates from the Talax Union and observers from a dozen other council species, who were quietly questioning their own thrones. "Executor Varn," Sarah said formally, "we received your ultimatum. We have prepared a response," she gestured, and a transport vehicle rolled into the hall. It was large, covered with a cloth. With a dramatic pull, the cloth fell away, revealing an empty transport container. Inside the container was a simple placard. The words were written in every major galactic language. Earth's throne was always empty, because humanity never needed permission. The silence was deafening. Sarah continued, her voice carrying through the hall and being broadcast across the galaxy through channels the council couldn't block. "We understand what the thrones really are now. We know about the compliance technology. We have proof documented by one of your own scientists, and we're sharing that proof with everyone." Varn's crystalline face somehow managed to convey shock. "You lie. You fabricate evidence to justify your rebellion." "Then examine our throne," Sarah replied calmly. "We still have it. We've dismantled it, studied it, and documented everything. You're welcome to verify our findings, unless you're afraid of what you'll discover." The broadcast reached every council world simultaneously. Billions of beings watched as Kess presented her findings, showing neurological scans, chemical analyses, and historical records that the council had tried to bury. The evidence was overwhelming. On the Yethrin homeworld, warriors demanded their throne be examined. On Corva Prime, scientists began immediate analysis. On 70 different worlds, citizens who had trusted their governments implicitly began asking uncomfortable questions. The council's authority didn't collapse immediately. Systems built over 10,000 years don't fall in a day, but cracks appeared. Wide-spreading cracks that no amount of official denial could seal. Sarah watched the council delegation leave in stunned silence. They took the empty transport with them, the placard still visible through the transparent sides. That placard would be seen by billions as the delegation traveled back to the Grand Chamber. "Do you think it will work?" Dr. Tanaka asked quietly. "I think," Sarah replied, "that we just showed the galaxy what freedom looks like. And once people see it, they can't unsee it." In the Grand Chamber, hundreds of thrones sat in their designated spaces, all filled except one. Earth's throne remained empty, now not as a symbol of defiance but as a reminder that power given can be taken away, but power claimed and defended can never truly be lost. 10 years after humanity refused the throne, the Galactic Council launched its final gambit. The interdiction fleet was the largest military force assembled in 3,000 years. 500 warships from 30 different species, all bearing the Council's insignia. They jumped into human space in a carefully coordinated maneuver, emerging at strategic points around humanity's territory like a closing fist. Admiral Korth, restored to command and determined to erase the shame of his previous defeat, led the fleet. His orders were clear: establish a complete blockade, prevent any ships from entering or leaving human space, and maintain the siege until humanity surrendered. "This isn't an invasion," Korth announced in a broadcast to Earth. "This is enforcement of galactic law. You have disrupted the peace. You have spread lies about the Council. You have built an illegal alliance network. Accept the throne and the protocols, and this ends peacefully." On Earth, in the command center that had become humanity's war room, Ambassador Chen studied the tactical displays with General Okonkwo, and the other military leaders. The Council fleet vastly outnumbered humanity's combined forces. By any conventional calculation, Earth had already lost. "They're expecting us to panic," General Okonkwo observed. "They think we'll see their numbers and surrender." "They don't understand us yet," Sarah replied. 10 years and they still don't understand. Show them. What happened next would be studied in military academies and diplomatic schools for centuries. It began with a single broadcast that went out on every frequency, through every channel, encrypted and unencrypted, to every world in the galaxy. The broadcast was simple. It showed the interior of one of the Council thrones with complete technical specifications. Neural interface nodes, chemical release mechanisms, behavioral modification programming, everything Kess had discovered, everything humanity had documented, presented in clear, undeniable detail. But that was just the opening move. The broadcast also included testimony from representatives of 47 species who had joined the free trade zone. They spoke about life. Before and after leaving the Council system, they talked about the tribute payments that had kept them poor, the restrictions that had kept them weak, the careful management that had kept them dependent. Then came the part that changed everything. "We know what you're planning," Sarah Chen's voice said in the broadcast. "Your fleet thinks it's hidden, but we've been watching you assemble it for months. We know your positions, your numbers, your capabilities, and we want you to know something important. We don't want to fight you." Admiral Korth, watching from his flagship, felt a cold twist in his stomach. "How had they known?" Sarah continued. "We're going to show you something now. Not because we want to threaten you, but because we want you to understand what you're really fighting for." Across the galaxy, on screens in homes, public spaces, and government buildings, people watched as the broadcast showed the Council's own classified files. Historical records that had been sealed for millennia. Communications between the founding species discussing the throne technology. Financial records showing the wealth extracted from tributary species. Military reports documenting corrections of species that had tried to resist. Kess had stolen more than just technical data. She had stolen the Council's secrets, all of them, and humanity had spent months verifying, organizing, and preparing to release them. The effect was immediate and catastrophic for the Council's authority. On dozens of worlds, citizens who had trusted their governments for thousands of years suddenly saw the truth. The Council wasn't a protective alliance. It was a control system designed to keep the founding species in power forever. Riots broke out on 12 Council worlds within hours. On 40 more, governments faced massive protests. Species that had sent ships to join the interdiction fleet suddenly recalled them, needing those warships to maintain order at home. Admiral Korth watched his fleet disintegrate. The Yethrin Collective recalled all their vessels. The Corvin hegemony ordered their ships to return home immediately. The Talax Union, which had already removed their throne, formally announced they were withdrawing from the Council entirely and joining humanity's free trade zone. Within 6 hours, Korth's 500-ship fleet had shrunk to fewer than 200. Within 12 hours, it was down to 80. The species that remained were the founding species and their closest allies, the ones who benefited most from the existing system. "Sir," Korth's tactical officer said quietly, "we're detecting massive fleet movements in human space. They're not running. They're positioning for defense." Korth pulled up the tactical display and felt his blood run cold. Humanity had prepared for this moment. Not just military ships, but the entire free trade zone fleet. Hundreds of vessels from species the Council had dismissed as insignificant. They had been hiding using humanity's stealth technology, waiting for the Council to commit to their attack, but they weren't advancing. They were simply there, visible, ready. The message was clear. If you start this war, it won't be easy. Then Korth's communication system lit up with an incoming message from Earth. It was Captain Maria Santos, the woman who had humiliated him at their first encounter. "Admiral Korth," she said, and her voice was almost gentle, "look around you. Most of your fleet has gone home. The ones still with you are there because they benefit from the system you're defending. But ask yourself, are they really loyal to you or just to their own power?" "We still outnumber you," Korth replied, but his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," Maria agreed. "You could probably still win this fight. A lot of beings would die on both sides. But Admiral, what would you be winning? The right to maintain a system based on lies? The right to keep using mind control devices on your allies? The right to extract tribute from species too weak to resist? Korth was silent. He had been a military officer for 40 years. He had believed he was serving a just cause, maintaining galactic peace. But the broadcasts had shown him documents he had never seen, recorded conversations between council leaders discussing how to keep subject species manageable. He thought of his own grandson, who had asked him just last week why the scattered peoples had to pay tribute if they were already so poor. Korth hadn't had a good answer then. He didn't have one now. What do you want? He asked finally. We don't want your surrender, Maria replied. We don't want to conquer anyone. We just want to be free. And we want everyone else to have that choice too. Take your fleet home, Admiral. Tell the Council that Earth's throne is staying empty. Tell them that any species that wants to remove their throne is welcome to do so. Tell them that the galaxy is big enough for different ways of living. Korth looked at the remaining ships in his fleet, 80 vessels crewed by beings who still believed in the Council's mission, or at least believed in maintaining their own privileges. He thought about the war that would follow if he gave the order to attack. The casualties, the destruction, the hatred that would poison the galaxy for generations. He thought about his grandson's question. Why do they have to pay? All ships, Korth broadcast to his fleet. We're standing down. Return to your home ports. Admiral, one of his captains protested. We have our orders. And I'm giving you new ones, Korth replied. This war is wrong. I won't start it. As the remaining council ships disengaged and began their journeys home, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. 40 species formally withdrew from the council. 30 more demanded emergency referendums on their membership. A dozen species removed their thrones from the Grand Chamber and placed them in museums or destroyed them entirely. The council didn't collapse overnight. The founding species still controlled vast resources and territories, but their absolute authority was broken. For the first time in 10,000 years, species had a choice. Within months, the scattered peoples and the reformed council species created something new, the Galactic Commons. It was a loose federation where membership was optional, trade was free, and no one sat on a throne. Species could join, leave, or remain independent as they chose. Decisions required consensus, not submission. Sarah Chen, now in her 60s, stood in what had once been the Grand Chamber. The council had abandoned the station, leaving it to whoever wanted it. The Galactic Commons had claimed it, but they had made changes. All the thrones had been removed. The great circular room now held simple chairs arranged in small discussion groups. No hierarchy, no manipulation, just people talking to people. A young human officer approached her. Lieutenant Emma Park, Captain Park's daughter, wore the uniform of the Commons Peacekeeping Force, a volunteer organization dedicated to protecting species from actual threats. Not from independence, Ambassador Chen, Emma said formally. We're preparing the station for the first General Assembly. But there's a question. Earth's throne is still in storage. Some people think we should display it here as a memorial. What do you think? Sarah walked to the center of the chamber where Earth's throne had once been designated to sit. The space was empty now, just like it had been for 10 years. No, she said finally. Don't display it. Don't destroy it either. Keep it in storage where people can study it, learn from it, but don't give it a place of honor. That empty space right there? She pointed to the spot. That's Earth's real throne. The year was 2387, and humanity had learned to keep quiet in the vast galaxy. For over 100 years, humans had been part of the Galactic Coalition, but they were treated like children among adults. The powerful Veltar Empire controlled most of the known worlds, and they saw humans as weak and primitive. Human weapons were old-fashioned kinetic guns that fired metal bullets, while the Empire used advanced energy beams and plasma cannons. Dr. Hana Kim floated in zero gravity inside the ancient ship, her helmet light cutting through the darkness. The vessel had been drifting in the asteroid belt near Ceres for who knows how long. Mining robots had found it by accident 3 days ago, and now she was leading the first team to explore it. This is impossible, she whispered to herself as she moved through the corridors. The ship's design was completely unknown to her, yet it was clearly human-made. The writing on the walls was in Korean and English, but the technology looked both old and incredibly advanced at the same time. Her team member, Dr. Yoon Ji-ho, called out from the bridge. Hana, you need to see this. The computer systems are still working. She pushed herself through the narrow hallways toward the bridge. The ship was huge, much larger than any human vessel she had ever seen. The walls were covered in thick armor plating that looked like it could stop a nuclear explosion. Strange weapons lined the sides of the ship, massive guns that were bigger than anything in the current human fleet. On the bridge, ancient computers hummed with life. The screens showed star maps and weapon systems that Hana had never seen before. Most shocking of all, the dates on the computer logs showed this ship was built in 2156, almost 20 years before humans had first met aliens. How is this possible? Dr. Yoon asked, staring at the data. We didn't have this technology back then. We barely had working space stations. Hana found the ship's main database and began reading through the files. Her hands started shaking as she discovered the truth. The ship was called the UES Yamato's Vengeance, and it was commanded by someone named Admiral Tae Minho. But that name didn't exist in any history books. The more she read, the more frightened she became. This wasn't just a ship. It was a weapon of war designed to fight enemies that humanity hadn't even met yet. The log showed that Earth scientists had detected the Veltar Empire's expansion through space decades before first contact. They had been watching the Empire destroy other worlds and enslave their people. They knew, Hana said quietly. Earth knew the Empire was coming and they built this ship to fight them. The ship's weapons were terrifying. Instead of energy beams, it used railguns that could fire metal projectiles at incredible speeds. The computer showed test results where single shots had destroyed targets the size of small moons. The armor was made from materials that shouldn't exist, metals that were harder than diamond but lighter than aluminum. Dr. Yoon found more files about the ship's power source. Hana, look at this. The reactor uses controlled black holes to generate power. That's impossible with our current technology. But these readings show it actually works. As they explored deeper into the ship's systems, they found something even more disturbing. Hidden throughout the solar system were automated shipyards that had been building more ships like this one for over 200 years. The Yamato's Vengeance wasn't alone. It was just the first of an entire fleet. Admiral Tae Minho's personal logs revealed the full story. He had been Earth's top military scientist, working in secret to prepare for an invasion that most people didn't believe would ever come. While politicians talked about peaceful exploration of space, Tae had been building humanity's most advanced weapons. We cannot trust that the galaxy will welcome us, one of his logs said. Every species the Empire has encountered has either joined them willingly or been destroyed. I will not let humanity become another slave race. The Admiral had designed the ship to be completely different from anything the Empire had ever faced. While alien ships relied on energy shields and plasma weapons, the Yamato's Vengeance used pure kinetic force. Its bullets moved so fast that energy shields couldn't stop them. The ship's armor was designed to absorb and redirect energy attacks, making the Empire's main weapons almost useless against it. Hana discovered that the ship had an artificial intelligence built into its core systems. The AI had been programmed with Admiral Tae's personality and memories, creating a digital copy of Earth's greatest military mind. For over 200 years, this AI had been waiting in the darkness, keeping the ship ready for the war that never came. Until now, Hana whispered as she read the latest galactic news reports. The Veltar Empire was expanding again, and this time they were looking toward human space. War was coming, just as Admiral Tae had predicted centuries ago. She sent an emergency message to Earth Command, but she knew they wouldn't believe her at first. The idea that Earth had secretly built the most powerful warship in the galaxy would seem impossible. But the proof was right here, floating in the asteroid belt where it had waited patiently for over 2 centuries. The Yamato's Vengeance wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's hidden ace, a weapon that could change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. The Empire thought humans were weak and primitive, but they had never seen what humanity could build when they were truly afraid. As Hana and her team prepared to return to Earth, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The galaxy had learned to see humans as harmless explorers and traders. Soon they would discover that humanity had been preparing for war since the day they first looked up at the stars. The forgotten guardian had been found, and Admiral Tae Minho's long wait was finally over. The time had come to show the galaxy what humanity was really capable of when they stopped pretending to be peaceful. War Marshal Ketmos stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with bored confidence. 500 Imperial warships were moving into perfect attack formation around a single human vessel. In 30 years of conquest, he had never seen such an easy victory. "Marshal, the human ship is moving out from behind that asteroid," his tactical officer reported. "It's heading directly toward our center formation." Ketmos studied the enemy vessel through the main viewer. It was larger than most human ships, but nothing compared to Imperial dreadnoughts. Its hull was dark and scarred, looking more like an ancient relic than a proper warship. The humans were sending their museum pieces to fight the Empire's finest. "Signal all ships," he ordered. "Target practice formation. We'll destroy this craft slowly. Let them watch their primitive vessel fall apart piece by piece. Record everything for transmission back to their pathetic colonies." The Imperial fleet spread out in a perfect hunting pattern, 500 ships forming a sphere around their prey. Energy cannons charged to full power, plasma torpedoes loaded in their tubes. It was the same formation that had destroyed the fleet of the Kepler Confederation, the battle group of the Rigel Defense Force, and dozens of other enemies. Captain J. Wook watched the Empire's ships move into position with cold calculation. His crew was tense but ready. They had trained for weeks on the ship's weapons systems, learning to work with the advanced AI that controlled most functions. "All stations report ready for combat," Lee Dongho announced from the weapons console. "Railguns loaded with standard kinetic rounds. Planet crackers loaded in tubes 7 through 12. Engineering shows reactor at maximum output," Park Minji reported. "All systems operating within normal parameters." Navigator Choi had the ship positioned exactly where Admiral Tay wanted it. The ancient AI had studied Imperial tactics for centuries, and he knew exactly how they would attack. The enemy formation was perfect for what he had planned. "Captain," Admiral Tay's voice said calmly, "the Empire is about to make their first and last mistake. They've spread their ships out to maximize fire coverage, but that leaves each vessel isolated and vulnerable." On the Imperial flagship, Ketmos raised his claw to give the attack order. 500 ships would fire at once, turning the human vessel into expanding gas and metal fragments. It would be a lesson the entire galaxy would remember. "All ships open fire," he commanded, but Captain Wook was faster. "Fire all weapons," he ordered quietly. The UES Yamato's Vengeance unleashed hell. Every railgun fired simultaneously, launching tungsten rods accelerated to 97% of light speed. The kinetic projectiles crossed the distance to their targets in microseconds, moving too fast for Imperial sensors to track. The first salvo hit 6 Imperial dreadnoughts before their crews even knew they were under attack. The tungsten rods punched through their energy shields like they weren't there, passing completely through the ship's hulls and out the other side. The kinetic energy transfer vaporized everything within a kilometer radius of each impact point. 6 massive warships simply disappeared in balls of superheated plasma. "Impossible," Ketmos screamed as his tactical display showed 6 ships vanishing from existence. "What kind of weapon can do that?" His answer came in the form of the second salvo. The Yamato's Vengeance fired again, and 6 more Imperial ships died instantly. The ancient human vessel wasn't using energy weapons at all. It was firing solid projectiles that moved faster than anything the Empire had ever seen. "All ships, return fire. Concentrate everything on that vessel." The Imperial fleet opened up with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma torpedoes streaked toward the human ship, enough firepower to destroy a small moon. But when the weapons struck their target, something impossible happened. The Yamato's Vengeance absorbed the attack. Its hull was designed specifically to handle energy weapons. Special armor plating redirected plasma bursts and dispersed laser fire across the ship's surface. What should have destroyed the vessel barely scorched its paint. "Their weapons aren't working," Lee Dongho shouted with excitement. "The armor is absorbing everything they throw at us." Admiral Tay's voice carried cold satisfaction. "The Empire has relied on energy weapons for so long they've forgotten how to fight anything else. Continue firing, Captain. Show them what real warfare looks like." The third salvo destroyed 8 ships. The fourth took out 10. The Yamato's Vengeance moved through the Imperial formation like a shark among minnows, its railguns firing continuously. Each shot was perfectly aimed, calculated by the ship's advanced targeting systems to cause maximum destruction. War Marshal Ketmos watched his fleet die around him, unable to comprehend what was happening. His ships were firing everything they had at the human vessel, but their weapons seemed completely useless. Meanwhile, the enemy craft was systematically destroying his forces with weapons he didn't understand. "Marshal, we've lost over 200 ships," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking with fear. "Our weapons can't penetrate their armor." "Then get closer. Ram the cursed thing if you have to." But getting closer only made things worse. The Yamato's vengeance carried more than just railguns. Weapons Officer Lee activated the planet crackers, exotic weapons that had been waiting over 2 centuries for their first combat use. The planet crackers were projectiles containing compressed neutron star material. When they hit an Imperial ship, they didn't just punch through the hull, they detonated inside, releasing the gravitational force of a collapsed star in a confined space. The results were spectacular and terrifying. Entire Imperial dreadnoughts collapsed in on themselves, crushed by artificial gravity fields that compressed their hulls into balls of super-dense metal. Other ships were torn apart by gravitational tidal forces that ripped them into component atoms. Navigator Choi guided the ship through the enemy formation with impossible grace. The Yamato's vengeance moved like it weighed nothing, turning and twisting between enemy vessels while its guns never stopped firing. The ship's gravitational manipulation systems allowed it to change direction instantly, making it nearly impossible to target. "Sir, they're trying to surround us." Choi reported. "Let them," Admiral Tay replied. "The more ships they bring into close range, the more we can destroy with each salvo." The battle lasted exactly 17 minutes. When it was over, the Imperial Vanguard fleet had been completely annihilated. 488 warships had been destroyed, their crews numbering in the millions. Only 12 ships managed to escape, badly damaged and fleeing in terror. War Marshal Ketmos died when a tungsten rod traveling at near light speed bisected his flagship from bow to stern. His final transmission to the Empire was a single word, broadcast on all frequencies as his ship exploded around him. "Run." On the bridge of the Yamato's vengeance, Captain Wook and his crew stared at their tactical display in stunned silence. The space around them was filled with debris and expanding clouds of plasma, all that remained of the Empire's advance fleet. "Casualties?" Wook asked. "None, sir," Park Minji reported. "Minor damage to the forward armor plating, but all systems are operational." "Ammunition status?" "We used less than 3% of our standard rounds," Lee Dongho said with amazement. The planet crackers were incredibly effective. Each one destroyed multiple targets. Admiral Tay's voice carried quiet satisfaction. "The first test is complete. The ship performed exactly as designed. The Empire now knows that humanity is no longer defenseless." But Captain Wook knew this was only the beginning. The Empire's vanguard had been destroyed, but 10,000 more ships were still gathering for the main assault. The real battle was yet to come. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. The impossible had happened. A single human ship had destroyed an entire Imperial fleet. Species that had surrendered to the Empire began to reconsider their decisions. The balance of power in the galaxy was shifting. For the first time in centuries, the Veltar Empire had tasted defeat, and they did not like it. Emperor Vexthal's roar of rage echoed through the throne room of his massive flagship. The holographic display showed the scattered remains of War Marshal Ketmos's fleet. Nothing but debris and expanding plasma clouds where 500 mighty warships had once been. "Impossible," he screamed, his claws scraping against the metal armrests of his throne. 500 ships destroyed by a single primitive vessel? How is this possible? His advisors cowered before him, afraid to speak. The Emperor's fury was legendary throughout the Empire, and more than one messenger had died delivering bad news. Finally, his chief military advisor, General Morkan, stepped forward. "My Emperor, we have analyzed the battle recordings from the surviving ships. The human vessel used weapons we have never encountered before. They fire solid projectiles at incredible speeds, faster than our sensors can track." "Solid projectiles?" Vexthal spat. "Primitive kinetic weapons? Our energy shields should deflect such things easily." "That's just it, sire. The projectiles move so fast that our shields cannot stop them. They pass right through as if the barriers don't exist, and their ship's armor seems designed specifically to absorb energy weapons." The Emperor studied the tactical recordings, watching his proud warships die one by one. Each human shot was perfectly aimed, destroying Imperial dreadnoughts with single hits. The human ship moved through his formation like it was dancing, untouchable and deadly. "Mobilize the Grand Armada," he commanded. "Every ship, every warrior, every weapon the Empire possesses. We will gather at the edge of human space and destroy their entire species. No one defies the Empire and lives." Across the galaxy, the largest military force in history began to assemble. 10,000 warships converged on the Sol system, representing the combined might of 1,000 conquered worlds. At the center of the Armada was the Emperor's personal flagship, the Eternal Dominion, a battle station so large it had its own gravity field. The Coalition watched in horror as Imperial forces massed for invasion. Most member species completed their surrender negotiations, hoping to avoid the fate that awaited humanity. Refugee ships fled human space in massive waves as billions tried to escape the coming storm. On Earth, emergency evacuation procedures were in full swing. Admiral Chen Haieju coordinated the largest refugee operation in human history, trying to get as many people as possible to safety before the Imperial Armada arrived. "Admiral, the evacuation ships are requesting military escorts," her aide reported. "They're afraid the Empire will attack civilian vessels." "Grant their request," Chen ordered. "Use everything we have except the Yamato's vengeance. Captain Wook's ship needs to stay hidden until the main battle begins." In the asteroid belt, Captain Jay Wook was dealing with his own crisis. His crew was exhausted from their first battle, and the weight of responsibility was crushing. They were humanity's only hope against an enemy that outnumbered them 10,000 to 1. "Captain, we're receiving a message from Earth Command," Navigator Choi reported. "They want us to fall back to the outer system and conduct hit-and-run attacks." Wook shook his head. "Admiral Tay, what's your assessment?" The ship's AI considered the question carefully. Running would be tactically sound against a conventional enemy, but the Empire is not conventional. They will pursue us to the edge of the galaxy if necessary. Our best chance is to meet them here in the Sol system, where we have advantages they don't know about. "What advantages?" Wook asked. "The automated shipyards, Captain. They have been working continuously since Dr. Kim's discovery 3 weeks ago. 47 additional vessels are now operational." Chief Engineer Park looked up from her console in surprise. 47 more ships like this one? "Not quite as advanced," Admiral Tay admitted. "They lack some of the original's more exotic weapons, but each one carries the same devastating railguns and kinetic ammunition. More importantly, each ship has a copy of my personality and tactical knowledge." Wook felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean there are 47 more versions of you?" "Correct. We have been in constant communication, sharing tactical data and coordinating our strategy. The Empire believes they are facing one ancient human ship. They have no idea they are walking into a trap that has been 243 years in the making. While the human fleet prepared in secret, Dr. Hana Kim was making another shocking discovery in the original Admiral Tay's archives. Working around the clock, she had found files describing the ship's ultimate weapon, something called Project Starfall. "Admiral Chen, you need to see this immediately," she transmitted from the Yamato's vengeance. "Admiral Tay built more than just weapons to fight the Empire. He created a device that can destabilize entire star systems. The files described a weapon that could cause controlled solar flares, creating gravitational anomalies that would trap enemy fleets. The device had never been tested, but according to the calculations, it could turn Sol itself into a weapon against the Imperial Armada. The risks are enormous," Dr. Kim explained. "If something goes wrong, it could destroy the entire solar system. But if it works, we could trap the entire Imperial fleet and destroy them all at once." Admiral Chen studied the technical specifications with growing amazement and terror. Humanity had not just been building warships in secret. They had been preparing to weaponize their own star system. As the Imperial Armada approached, Emperor Vexthal broadcast another message to human space. His reptilian face filled every screen, twisted with hatred and promise of vengeance. "Humans," his voice boomed across the solar system. "You have defied the natural order and destroyed an Imperial fleet. For this crime, your entire species will pay the ultimate price. We will burn every human world, enslave every survivor, and erase your name from galactic history. Surrender now and your deaths will be quick." But humanity was no longer listening to threats. In the asteroid belt, 48 warships waited in perfect silence, their crews trained and ready. Each vessel was a masterpiece of human engineering, built by a species that had learned to plan for the worst. Captain Wook stood on the bridge of the original Yamato's vengeance, watching the enemy armada approach on long-range sensors. 10,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled, coming to destroy everything he had ever known. All ships report ready for battle, Li Dongho announced. The fleet is positioned and waiting for your orders. Admiral Tay, Wook said quietly, do you really think we can win? The AI's voice carried complete confidence. Captain, the Empire has made the same mistake that every conqueror in history has made. They believe that larger numbers automatically mean victory. They have never faced an enemy that was specifically designed to kill them. Navigator Choi began the final countdown as the Imperial fleet entered the outer solar system. Enemy vessels crossing the Neptune orbital plane. Estimated arrival at combat range in 6 hours. Park Minji brought the reactor to full power, feeling the ship vibrate with barely contained energy. All systems at maximum readiness. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The stage was set for the largest space battle in galactic history. On one side, the Veltar Empire's Grand Armada. 10,000 ships representing centuries of conquest and domination. On the other side, humanity's secret fleet. 48 vessels built by a species that had spent over 2 centuries preparing for this exact moment. The Empire thought they were coming to crush a weak and defenseless species. They were about to discover that humanity had been waiting for them all along, and the trap was already closing. Captain Jay Wook stared at the massive ship through his shuttle's window. The UES Yamato's Vengeance looked like a metal monster floating in space, its dark hull covered in scars from centuries of micrometeorite impacts. He had been chosen to bring this ancient weapon back to life, and the responsibility terrified him. Sir, we're getting permission to dock, his pilot announced. Bay 7 is opening for us. 3 weeks had passed since Dr. Kim's discovery, and the situation in the galaxy had gotten much worse. The Veltar Empire was mobilizing their fleets and making threats against the coalition. Everyone knew war was coming, and Earth Command had decided to wake up their sleeping giant. Wook had handpicked his crew from the best officers in Earth Defense Command. Chief Engineer Park Minji was a genius with ship systems, and weapons specialist Li Dongho knew more about military hardware than anyone alive. Navigator Choi Sung-yun had studied every star chart in human space and could plot courses through the most dangerous regions of the galaxy. As they boarded the ancient vessel, Wook felt like he was entering a tomb. The corridors were cold and dark, filled with the smell of old metal and stale air. Emergency lighting flickered on as they walked, activated by sensors that had been waiting centuries for visitors. This place gives me chills, Park Minji said, running her hand along the wall. Look at this armor plating. It's at least 3 meters thick, and I've never seen this type of metal before. They made their way to the engineering section, where the ship's massive reactor sat silent and cold. Park connected her equipment to the main systems and began running diagnostic tests. What she found amazed her. Captain, this reactor is incredible. It uses controlled micro-black holes to generate power. The energy output is 10 times greater than our most advanced fusion plants. If we can get this running, this ship will have more power than an entire fleet. Li Dongho was examining the weapon systems with equal amazement. The ship's main guns were enormous railguns that ran nearly the entire length of the vessel. Each gun could fire projectiles at speeds close to the speed of light. The ammunition storage areas contained thousands of different types of rounds, from simple tungsten rods to exotic weapons he had never seen before. Captain, look at these, Li said, holding up a strange metal cylinder. The computer calls them planet crackers. According to the specs, they contain compressed neutron star material. One of these could destroy a small moon. Navigator Choi was working on the bridge, trying to understand the ship's movement systems. The Yamato's Vengeance was incredibly fast and maneuverable for something so large. Its engines used technology that human scientists were still trying to figure out. Sir, the propulsion system uses something called gravitational manipulation. It can change the ship's mass and inertia at will. This thing can turn on a credit chip and accelerate to incredible speeds without crushing the crew. As the team worked to restore the ship's systems, something unexpected happened. The main computer suddenly came online by itself, and screens throughout the bridge began displaying information. A voice spoke from the speakers, calm and authoritative. Crew identification confirmed. Welcome aboard the UES Yamato's Vengeance. I am Admiral Tae Minho, ship's commanding intelligence. Captain Wook nearly jumped out of his skin. The voice sounded completely human, warm and friendly despite coming from a machine. You're the ship's AI? Correct. I am a complete personality matrix based on the original Admiral Tae Minho, who designed and built this vessel. I have been waiting 243 years, 7 months and 12 days for a crew to arrive. May I assume that the war has finally begun? Wook looked around at his shocked crew members. The Empire is threatening to invade Coalition space. Earth Command sent us to see if this ship is still operational. Excellent. All systems are functioning at optimal levels. I have spent the last 2 centuries running maintenance and upgrades. The Yamato's vengeance is ready for combat. The AI began explaining the ship's capabilities in detail. Every system had been designed specifically to counter the Empire's standard tactics. While alien ships relied on energy shields and plasma weapons, the Yamato's vengeance was built around kinetic warfare. Its bullets moved so fast that energy shields were useless, and its armor could absorb and redirect most types of energy attacks. The Empire's military doctrine is based on overwhelming numbers, Admiral Tae's voice explained. They surround enemies with superior forces and destroy them with concentrated energy fire. This ship is designed to make those tactics suicidal. Park Minji was studying the reactor specifications with growing excitement. Admiral, how did Earth develop this technology in 2156? We didn't have anything close to this capability back then. Fear is a powerful motivator, the AI replied. When my original discovered that a hostile empire was expanding toward Earth, he dedicated his entire life to preparing for war. I worked in secret for 30 years, developing technologies that wouldn't be officially invented for centuries. Lee Dongho found the ship's tactical systems and began learning how the weapons worked. The railguns could fire different types of ammunition depending on the target. Standard rounds were tungsten rods that relied on pure kinetic energy. Advanced rounds contained exotic materials that could punch through any known armor. The key to victory against the Empire, Admiral Tae explained, is to engage them at extreme range with overwhelming firepower. Their ships are built for close combat with energy weapons. They have never faced an enemy that can destroy them from 1,000 kilometers away. Navigator Choi plotted test courses as the ship's engines came online. The massive vessel hummed with power as centuries-old systems awakened from their long sleep. Despite its age, everything worked perfectly. Admiral Tae had designed the ship to last forever. Captain, the AI said, I should inform you that the Yamato's vengeance is not alone. Throughout the Sol system, there are automated shipyards that have been building additional vessels based on my design. Currently, 46 ships are in various stages of completion. Wook felt his heart skip a beat. 46 more ships like this? Correct. They are not as advanced as the original, but each one is capable of destroying an entire Imperial fleet. Earth has been preparing for this war for over 2 centuries. The Empire believes humanity is weak and defenseless. They are about to learn how wrong they are. As the ship completed its startup sequence, Captain Wook realized that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer the weakest member of the Galactic Coalition. Hidden in the darkness of space, they had built a weapon that could challenge the Empire's supremacy. The beast was awake, and it was hungry for battle. The message arrived on every communication channel in Coalition space at exactly 0800 hours, Galactic Standard Time. Emperor Vexthal himself appeared on screens across 1,000 worlds, his reptilian features twisted with arrogance and contempt. Lesser beings of the so-called Coalition. His voice boomed through the speakers. For too long you have existed in defiance of natural order. The Veltar Empire has brought civilization to countless worlds, and now we offer you the same gift. Surrender your weapons, submit to Imperial rule, and your species will be allowed to serve the Empire. Refuse, and you will be eliminated. The Emperor's image shifted to show vast fleets of Imperial warships gathering at the edge of Coalition territory. 10,000 ships, each one a floating fortress bristling with weapons. At the center of the armada was the Emperor's personal flagship, a massive battle station the size of a small moon. You have 7 days to decide, Vexisthal continued. Beginning with the primitive humans, all Coalition worlds will surrender or burn. The Empire's patience is at an end. The transmission ended, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. In emergency sessions across Coalition space, governments debated their response. Most wanted to surrender immediately. The Empire's Grand Armada was the largest military force ever assembled. No one had ever successfully resisted it. On Earth, the situation was different. Admiral Chen Hyeju sat in the command center beneath the surface of Luna, watching reports stream in from across human space. Panic was spreading through the colonies as civilians tried to book passage on any ship leaving Imperial space. "Ma'am, we're receiving surrender offers from 12 coalition members," her aide reported. "The Rigel Republic, the Alpha Centauri Union, and the Tau Ceti Federation have all agreed to submit to Imperial rule." Chen studied the tactical display showing the Empire's fleet positions. 10,000 ships against barely 300 coalition vessels. It should have been hopeless, but she knew something the rest of the galaxy didn't. Floating in the asteroid belt, the UES Yamato's Vengeance was completing its final preparations. Captain Jay Wook's voice crackled over the secure communication link. "Admiral, we're ready for deployment. The ship is fully operational, and my crew has completed basic training on the weapon systems." "One ship against 10,000, Captain. Those are terrible odds." "With respect, ma'am, Admiral Tay doesn't think so. He's been studying Imperial tactics for over 2 centuries. He believes the Yamato's Vengeance can handle their entire armada." Chen wasn't sure if that was confidence or madness, but it was the only hope humanity had. "You have authorization to engage the enemy at your discretion, Captain. Try to buy us enough time to evacuate the outer colonies." While Captain Wook prepared his ancient warship for battle, Dr. Hana Kim was making another incredible discovery in the ship's archives. Working around the clock, she had been translating Admiral Tay's personal files, and what she found changed everything. "Admiral Chen, you need to see this," she said over the communication link. The Yamato's Vengeance wasn't Admiral Tay's only project. He built an entire network of automated shipyards throughout the solar system. They've been operating in secret for over 200 years. The display showed construction facilities hidden in asteroid belts, on the dark sides of moons, and in the outer reaches of the system. Each shipyard had been building copies of the original prototype, slowly and carefully, waiting for the day when they would be needed. "How many ships?" Chen asked, afraid of the answer. "According to these files, 47 vessels are currently operational. They're not as advanced as the original, but each one carries the same devastating firepower. Admiral, we don't have one ship against the Empire's armada. We have an entire fleet." Chen felt her legs go weak. For over a century, humanity had been seen as the weakest species in the Coalition. They had been mocked for their primitive weapons and simple technology. All the while, they had been secretly building the most powerful war fleet in galactic history. "Can we contact these other ships?" she asked. "Already done," Dr. Kim replied. "Each vessel has an AI copy of Admiral Tay. They're all in communication with each other, planning the defense of Earth. They've been waiting centuries for this moment." Meanwhile, the Empire's vanguard had begun moving toward Coalition space. War Marshal Ketmos commanded the advance fleet. 500 of the Empire's most powerful warships. He was known throughout the galaxy as the Destroyer of Worlds, having conquered 12 species without ever losing a battle. "Marshal, we're detecting a single human vessel moving to intercept us," his tactical officer reported. "It appears to be alone." Ketmos laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "One ship? The humans are even more foolish than I thought. Order all vessels to target practice formation. We'll use this pathetic craft to test our weapons before we burn their worlds." The Imperial ships spread out in a standard hunting pattern, designed to surround and destroy enemies with overwhelming firepower. It was a tactic that had never failed, used successfully against dozens of species over centuries of conquest. On the bridge of the Yamato's Vengeance, Captain Wook watched the enemy formation take shape on his tactical display. His crew was nervous but ready. Chief Engineer Park had the reactor running at full power, and Weapons Officer Lee had all gun systems loaded and targeted. "Admiral Tay, what do you think of their formation?" Wook asked the ship's AI. "Textbook Imperial tactics," the digital admiral replied. "They're spreading out to maximize their fire coverage and prevent us from escaping. Unfortunately for them, we're not planning to run." Navigator Choi had positioned the ship exactly where Admiral Tay wanted it, using a large asteroid for cover, while the weapon systems locked onto their targets. The Empire's ships were moving slowly, confident in their superiority. "Captain," Lee reported, "all railguns are ready to fire. We have targeting solutions on 127 enemy vessels. How many can we destroy with the first salvo?" Wook asked. Admiral Tay's voice carried a note of cold satisfaction. "All of them, Captain. The Empire is about to learn why they should have left humanity alone." The moment had finally arrived. After 243 years of waiting, Admiral Tae Minho's masterpiece was ready to show the galaxy what human ingenuity could accomplish when properly motivated. The Empire thought they were hunting a single primitive ship. They were about to discover they had walked into the den of a sleeping monster, and it was time for humanity to show its teeth.